FromSoftware has become one of the most prominent video game companies of all time thanks to its huge modern successes, such as Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Players love the hardcore combat in these games, pushing them to reach new heights as they strive to become as competent as possible in these titles. The Souls DNA is rampant in most of FromSoftware's modern games, including Sekiro, a title that is a huge departure in many ways, yet fits like a glove for players familiar with this studio's works. Getting stronger and more skilled as players tear apart bosses and enemies makes for a great time that players can't get enough of. When Demon's Souls first launched back in 2009, Miyazaki and the team at FromSoftware were terrified that it was going to be a commercial bomb and produced a limited run. Even though sales were slow immediately following its launch, the critical reception of the game and word of mouth caused it to sell out when sales numbers swiftly began to increase. Of course, the rest is history. Demon's Souls' critical acclaim at launch led to the games being a runaway hit, and as a result of its popularity, an entire new genre of game was born. While it could be argued it deserves a higher spot on this list for that feat alone, some of Demon's Souls' mechanics do seem a little dated compared to its successors. The Demon's Souls remake on PS5 would likely have been higher, but FromSoftware didn't directly assist in its development, so that alone obscures it from being considered.
The success of Elden Ring compelled FromSoftware to develop a spin-off title with a co-op focus and procedurally generated elements. The end result is Elden Ring Nightreign, a fun experiment with a few quirks that players will get over in no time. The insistence on 3-player co-op is frustrating, but the gameplay loop is solid enough for players to have a great time with this experience. Controlling preset characters and combining strategies to defeat both new and old bosses alike makes Nightreign a joy to play through.
If the changes made to the series formula in Dark Souls 2 are considered to be too risky and polarizing, then Dark Souls 3 is arguably its complete opposite. A game that seeks to improve upon everything the original Dark Souls did right, whilst changing very little in regard to its system mechanics in the process. The original Dark Souls was lauded for making necessary updates and changes to the groundwork that Demon's Souls had laid. So, FromSoftware decided to take what it learned from the initial player reception to Dark Souls 2 and simply improve upon its winning formula. Surprising? Absolutely no one. This led to stellar reviews and ridiculously high sales numbers.
Compared to every other entry on this list, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is the least Souls-like Souls game by quite a considerable margin. While the Soulsborne series is anchored on action RPG gameplay, Sekiro completely drops the RPG elements in favor of the best action system ever created. For that reason, some people might not even count it as part of the Soulsborne series. However, the use of checkpoints, the punishment for death, and most importantly, the deep exploration of an interconnected world are still there, bringing it closer to the Dark Souls formula. While the absence of character customization might prevent you from replaying the game in a whole different fashion, by knowing the equipment every player will have, FromSoftware was able to create the best boss battles ever created. Each boss is fine-tuned to the precise dance of Swords of Sekiro, something that wouldn't be possible if you completely change your build. So even if Sekiro doesn't hold the same replay value as other Soulsborne titles, it arguably offers the most thrilling boss battles in the series.
A fun twist on the usual fantasy elements that the Soulsborne games focus on, Armored Core takes you to a sci-fi future with some difficult mech-on-mech fights that are quite impressive in a few distinct ways. The visuals are everything you'd expect from FromSoft, with lasers and rockets lancing across the screen in vivid detail. In addition, there are some boss fights that are absolutely massive, and while they're just as hard as ever, they're great for making you feel like a champion. There's some fun customization that you can tweak your mech with on the fly to help you beat baddies, but it does fall off in comparison to some of the other plots and themes that other FromSoft games bring to the table.
It's rare that a game, or any piece of media for that matter, is somehow so popular and revered, yet simultaneously gets to enjoy being labeled as a cult classic. In Bloodborne's case, that label does fit, as it's difficult to think of a fanbase more passionate and as outspoken as Bloodborne's. It's not hard to see why, as very few games can compare to it both mechanically and stylistically. The striking, grim-dark world that Bloodborne is set in distinguishes it from all of FromSoftware's other Souls titles, which is impressive considering the Souls titles aren't exactly known for being upbeat and cheery. In addition, while using the Dark Souls formula of checkpoints and an interconnected semi-open world, Bloodborne creates its own action system based on high aggressivity instead of careful play.
Elden Ring is everything people have come to love about the Souls genre, perfectly applied to an open world. Thanks to universally positive review scores, the game has won basically every video game award known to man, and had stellar sales, surpassing every other title in the series. Furthermore, the game is huge and takes hundreds of hours to fully explore. A staggering amount of content, paired with an incredible focus on its detail and lore, has made Elden Ring infinitely replayable. The most impressive thing about Elden Ring is that even though the public's expectations for the title were unfathomably massive leading up to its launch, somehow FromSoftware managed to exceed said anticipations and deliver a title many, justifiably, already consider one of the greatest games ever made.
The lack of Miyazaki's influence is palpable in Dark Souls 2, but there's still a lot to this experience that fans will love. The emphasis on a story that feels less passive allows players to engage in epic battles while exploring a decaying world. The combat feels as great as ever, and players will love taking out the many enemies that stand in their way. Once players get used to Dark Souls 2's mechanics, powering through this game and its DLC will feel great.
Whilst Demon Souls is considered the first true Souls game, Dark Souls is considered to be the perfected blueprint that truly solidified the genre and the gaming zeitgeist. As stated by Miyazaki himself, the development of Demon Souls was extremely troubled during its early stages, and as a result, several ideas were scrapped and a lot of development time was wasted. When it came to developing Dark Souls, FromSoftware was more organized, and the team felt galvanized by the surprise success of its predecessor. Dark Souls went on to sell more than twice as many copies as the original Demon Souls, bringing the Souls genre into the mainstream. It's ought not to see Dark Souls as an improvement over Demon Souls in almost every single way, due in no small part to its streamlined development process. More obvious improvements to its graphics and sound design were paired with welcome updates to the Souls genre's system mechanics, like improved range of movement and an increased variety in potential character balance.